So I'm talking to you now on the eve of Donald Trump's State of the Union address. Ironically, that State of the Union address is coming after the second day that the stock market has plummeted. Let me repeat that. The State of the Union address is coming on the second day of the stock market plummeting, and it's plummeting for the exact reason that I tried to explain to all of you before the election. Donald Trump doesn't know anything about economics, or he doesn't care. He knows nothing about history, or he doesn't care. I doubt if he even knows what the Smoot-Hawley tariff was. He's probably never even heard the term Smoot-Hawley. Most of you probably haven't, but you have Google. Unlike Trump, I'm sure that when we're done, you're going to go to Google and look up Smoot-Hawley and become experts on the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. And if you don't know it, shame on you. Because the problem with the American people is they are really, that's why I just went past it, ignorant of economics and ignorant of history. And you put those two together, and what you get is people continuing to vote Republicans in office who commit the same mistakes of the past. Historically, they have made economic mistakes, and they always revolve around a couple of things: cutting taxes for the wealthy, driving up the national debt, and in the case of Donald Trump and the Smoot-Hawley group back in 32, it was right after the Great Depression hit in 29. Roosevelt was elected in 32. He took office in 31, and in 32, the Smoot-Hawley tariff went into effect, and the Smoot-Hawley tariff arguably led to a worldwide depression and brought us into World War II. Study a little bit. Pick up a book on economics. Pick up a book on the basics of calculus. Pick up a history book. Learn something about what has happened in this country in the past, and stop voting for people who are going to keep making the same damn mistakes. And now we have Donald Trump, who's going to sit there, and I can't wait to see this tonight. How is he going to explain how his wonderful economic policies, mainly tariffs that were absurd, are going to bring about, or did not bring about, the collapse that's occurring right now in the stock market? This would be like Herbert Hoover coming on right after and giving a State of the Union address in 1930, talking about how, well, you know, things are really doing pretty good now. I know we just had a collapse of the stock market, but hey, what, Herbert? Hey, what, Donald? Hey, what, all you people who voted for this man? People who have no understanding of economics and no understanding of history. And I told you repeatedly, and of course I'm not blaming you watching this program, but the people out there who voted on the basis of diversity, equity, and inclusion, who got mad at black people getting breaks in their perception at the expense of white people, and that's why they voted. People were mad about transvestites of all things. It's like, stop it already. Pay attention. Politics is about economics. It's about taxes. It's about tariffs. It's about economic growth. It's about the stock market. It's about making the country function economically. You know, the Clinton people said, you know, it's the economy's stupid, but you didn't have to have Clinton for that. That's what Roosevelt said. And Roosevelt got us out of this thing with this government structure that Trump seems to think is so evil. They need to dismantle it to take us back to where we were before. He's also an American firster. Who were the American firsters? Everybody say, well, you know, I don't know why you don't agree with Trump on America First, because I know history. I was born during World War II. I remember the American firsters. You know who they were? They were pro-Nazis. They were people who said we should stay out of World War II. We should stay out of Europe's war. We shouldn't worry about what's happening to the Jews. Shouldn't give a damn about them. We should be on the side of Germany. You know who those people were? Father Coughlin, Arthur Vandenberg. To his everlasting shame, Lindbergh. These were and it was the Republican Party establishment that said, don't get involved. It's not our business. America first. Worry about us. Don't worry about what's happening to the Jews. Don't worry about what Germany is doing to Europe. Don't worry about it. It's not our problem. Stay out of it. And that's right where Donald Trump has said. He even uses the term America first. He uses a term that has been discredited in history America first means America last. And Roosevelt said, we're not going to have that America first crap. We're getting involved in this war, and thank God he did. And so did Truman, and so did Kennedy. And what really sparked my wrath today, and not wrath, really sadness. I was over we climbed the Jupiter Lighthouse tonight, which you should all do that someday if you get a chance. Now, I live in Jupiter, Florida, just up the road from Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump's kid lives like 3 miles away from me. It's a pretty good area here. And so I went over to Joe Namath's bar up there, and it's on Love Avenue. And it sits right on the Intercoastal. So you stand and you sit in that bar and you look out and you see the Intercoastal, you see not the Intercoastal waterway, you see the inlet. The ocean's on your right, the Intercoastal's on your left, straight ahead is the Jupiter Lighthouse. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. You know what else was part of that view? Well, I'm asking, okay, I'm going to just tell you because you don't know. You weren't there, I don't think. Maybe some of you were. I don't know. I really couldn't tell everybody who was there because I have cataracts, so probably you were there and I didn't see you. John Kennedy's yacht was right in front of us. It was right down below us on the dock. The Honey Fitz. That was named after Kennedy's grandfather, for those of you who don't know anything about history or politics. Honey Fitzgerald was the mayor of Boston, and he was Jack Kennedy's grandfather. So, the Honey Fitz was Jack Kennedy's yacht, and I remembered as a kid, but it was, because I sat down, I looked at this boat, I said, it's a beautiful boat. It looks so familiar. Why didn't I recognize, what is that boat? So I asked the waiter, I said, what's the name of that boat? She said, it's the Honey Fitz. I said, was that? She said, yes, that was President Kennedy's boat. And it just brought back a flood of memories about what a wonderful President John Kennedy was, what a wonderful human being was, how strong he was, how moral he was, how courageous he was, and how intelligent he was, and how he saw things clearly, and he had the courage to take the right steps. As my dad used to say, he had moral courage. And I remember that Cuban Missile Crisis. I remember like it was yesterday. How do I remember it so well? I'll tell you how. I was in college at the time. And my father was a colonel, and he was stationed at Scott Air Force Base, Illinois. And right at the height of this thing, when people were legitimately, it turns out, worried that we were going to shoot down the Russian ships for breaking the embargo that we had placed on Cuba. And the concern was, and it turned out later in Khrushchev's memoirs, which I've read, he said that they fully intended that had we shot those ships down that were trying to break the embargo, which we didn't because they turned around at the last minute, thanks to some last-minute negotiations by Bobby Kennedy. But that would have led us into World War III, and it would have been an all-out nuclear war. So I wanted to get a hold of my dad to see if he could give me some insight. So I tried calling him, and I kept being told that Colonel O'Connor is not available. And then they would hang up on me, and I couldn't reach him. I said, well, can I leave him a message? And they just hang up. Well, they found out later why Colonel O'Connor was not available, because it turns out that the headquarters for the entire operation was at Scott Field, where my dad was stationed, where I basically grown up. But they were all in the basement, the sub-basement. It was way underground, and that was where all of the command center was, the command and control center from the military perspective for what was going on in Cuba. And my dad was in that in control and command center because he was the general's lawyer. And so I couldn't reach him. And I didn't panic. We never learned in my family to panic about anything. But I was concerned. When I found out later what had gone on, I was legitimately concerned because Scott Air Force Base was well known to the Russians as being the command and control center for this entire operation and every other operation that goes on worldwide. For some reason, they have that right in that area, and I think it's because they're so deeply embedded in the Midwest. I figure it's kind of a safe place to be, and if there is an attack on it, it won't be attacking a major population center. So that was as I found out later, that was a number one target. Scott Air Force Base, where my dad was stationed down there in the bunker, that was the number one target, along with New York and a number of other of our major centers and the population centers in the country. So I remember that like it was yesterday because I finally got through to my dad and he told me what had happened. By then it was over. And it's like, wow, how close we came. And thank God we had a man like Jack Kennedy at the helm. Not a blowhard, a experienced person, a combat veteran, a calm person, an intellectual, but also a realist. And Jack Kennedy steered us through that thing, and you should read about the Cuban Missile Crisis. You'd appreciate what a fine president he was. And now I'm started looking at his book, at his boat, as I'm sitting here getting ready to watch this clown, this completely unqualified yo-yo, and I knew him. You know, people, well, you know, he was a fine, but he's not a fine person. I lived in Palm Beach for 10 years, and I knew Donald Trump fairly well. Met him socially, met him a number of times. He was a complete jerk-off then. Now he's worse because now he has power. Back in those days, he just had opinions on everything. Now he's powerful. He's a man who has the ability to cause a lot of damage to a lot of people. So, and I'm thinking of and here we, both of them from Palm Beach, right? Jack Kennedy was, his family lived in Palm Beach. I stayed at the Kennedy house when I first moved to Florida. Stayed at his mother's house in Palm Beach. The Kennedys were fine people. Trumps, they're the opposite end. You've got a whole spectrum of people in Palm Beach. There's one person said it's a floating loony bin, and there's some truth in that. Some good people in Palm Beach, some bad people in Palm Beach, some smart people in Palm Beach. Mainly, it's full of alcoholics. You got all these second and third generation people who inherited, millions and millions of dollars from, the industrial barons from the 1800s. But they don't know anything. They went to great schools, they got degrees, they never got jobs, and they spent all their time in bars. The bars are full of them. So, Trump is one of the people, though he says he doesn't drink. I mean, he's got to do something. Nobody thinks the way he does and doesn't do something to alter his normal thought process. But he's the low end of the spectrum. The Kennedys were the high end of the spectrum. In Palm Beach, you've got the whole range. And it was like, what a shame. Everything Jack Kennedy was, and seeing that boat brought all those memories back. And think about where we are now with this complete idiot in charge. And if you don't like my calling him an idiot, then don't watch my program anymore, because I've got good reason to believe he's an idiot. And I hate to get mad about these things, but, I live in this country. We're bigger than ourselves. We're bigger than our families. We're bigger than our neighborhoods. We're members of a country. And when you're a member of a country, I don't care what it is, a big part of how you feel about things depends on how you feel about your country and what's going on in it. That's what patriotism means. It's not a silly word. It's a reality. And as a person who, grew up with patriotism, my dad was a military officer. I worked for the Air Force as a lawyer, civilian equivalent of a major. I love this country, and I love its history, and I love people we've had like Truman and Roosevelt, Kennedy, and frankly Clinton and Obama. And Joe Biden, who will go down in history as an outstanding president, particularly on his economic record, compared to this clown who's been in office for, 3 days? And now we've got the stock market in complete freefall. Think about that when you're inclined to think, well, he can't be too bad, and he's against diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's ruining the economy, folks. And what he's doing with Ukraine, I've already talked about it the other day, it's disgraceful. He's a bully. He's going to kill millions of people by refusing to give them aid that was already voted for and approved by Congress and approved by the prior administration. And this jerk comes in and says, I'm stopping it because I didn't think he was respectful enough of me. Well, why would he be respectful of you? I'm not respectful of you. I'm not asking you for money, thank God, but I don't respect you. You're the President of the United States. I'm supposed to respect you because you're the President? No. I don't respect you. It's a disgrace that you are in that office, and I disrespect you and the people who voted for you. Now, if I sound like I'm pissed, it's because I'm pissed.